My next guest is an Army veteran, businessman, former FBI special agent who took down organized crime in Chicago, former congressman from Michigan. He was my congressman, in fact. Mike Rogers joining me now on the program because he's running for a Senate seat in Michigan. And new polling has the Democrats going, wow. New polling, I think it was from AARP, showed Mike Rogers tied with people over 50 years of age, the people that do vote every single time. He's with me now. Mike, nice to see you again.
It is great to be here. Thanks, Steve. That was an exciting poll for us because it's finally showing that the work that we're doing on the ground is paying off.
Yeah, you know, a lot of this polling seems almost bipolar this year. I mean, it's all over the place recently when it comes to top of the ticket running for president. For example, Donald Trump leading the last two polls I saw in Michigan by a point. Polls before that showed Kamala Harris winning by as much as 10 points or more, which seemed kind of a bit of an outlier. What are your polling numbers telling you internally? How close is this race?
We are statistically tied. We had a poll, and you have to watch. So even the Real Clear Average polls, they like to quote that a lot in the media. We found one of the polls they did was an online poll, had us down by 11 points or something. It was clearly a skewed poll, and it was only by people who participated. You had no idea if they were registered voters or not. And so when you look at those kind of polls, you have to throw all that out. Our poll shows that this thing is a dead heat. And it is going to continue. The last four polls statewide, Steve, is a dead heat. Yeah. So we're close, and now it's just a matter, can we find enough friends and finances to make sure that our message gets out and that we're talking to people that need to understand why this is an important election, why they need to get out and vote. There were something on the order of 200,000 pro-Trump voters in the last election that didn't vote. And so, we have some challenges in trying to make sure that those people understand the importance of this election and come out to the polls. And if they all come out, Donald Trump's going to win Michigan, and I'm going to win Michigan, and we'll finally get America back on track.
It's interesting because there are people out there that only vote in presidential elections. They'll vote in 16 and 20, but they don't show up in 18 or 22. You're exactly right. A whole host of, and this is probably true around the country, but here in Michigan, where you and I live, a whole host of Trump voters didn't turn out in the midterms, and it didn't go particularly well. The red wave turned into a bit of a red whimper. But it could change this time around. And how important, look, West Virginia is already going to go to the Republicans. Montana looks like it's going to go to the Republicans. So that puts you in the majority. But the bigger the majority, the better. Maryland, a big surprise race that is also very competitive, where I don't think a Republican's won in a generation. In Michigan, a Republican has not won in a generation. Why do you think people are gravitating toward, Donald Trump in the last two polls and to you? What's changed? Why are people coming back to the Republicans?
No matter what the Democrats tell you, and they work very hard at telling you everything's fine, we've done a better job, be afraid of Republicans. Their grocery bill is higher, their energy bill is higher, their insurance payment is higher, their wages are not higher, $2,000 less in real income in the state of Michigan 4 years after Donald Trump. And so I think people are starting to understand that these policies matter, and the emotional feel-good, this is about democracy, is absolute and utter nonsense. This is about the next generation of Americans having the opportunity to buy a home. That seems out of reach for so many. And why? It's the policies of the Democrats in the last 4 and 6 years. And my opponent, Congresswoman Slotkin, is absolutely a part of this problem. And here's what they know. Steve, think of this. In Michigan, we've been talking about this EV mandate in a way like nobody wants to be told what kind of car you have to buy, so they don't like it for that reason. But they should also not like it because it's destroying these Democrat mandates on what car you should have to drive is destroying the American auto industry. 2,400 layoffs in Stellantis, 1,000 layoffs at General Motors. Ford just announced a couple of lines will be shut down. That's going to result in layoffs here pretty soon. And it's because the government said we're going to get into the business of telling car companies what cars they have to produce. This, in a state like Michigan, you start taking out literally 400,000 manufacturing jobs that build gas engines. We're in trouble in this state.
And I want to mention this because for people that, don't live in Michigan, they know who Governor Whitmer is. They know that the Democrats are in charge of Michigan, just barely, but they have a one-vote advantage. That's all they need. And I was at a restaurant here, not too far from the Capitol, just yesterday, talking to the owner. He says, look, they're trying to raise minimum wage on tipped employees to $6-8 an hour, plus 72 hours of paid sick time for any reason you want in Michigan, for even if you have one employee. And on top of that, if you don't show up for 3 days and then say, oh yeah, I'm sick, you can't fire this employee. These are the leftist ideas that would go national. They would if we allow this election to go the wrong way. And so I say to people, you got to vote, because these crazy ideas, by the way, the restaurant says they wouldn't survive that. They will be out of business. They've been there as long as I've been alive. Nice place. And it's going to be gone if this goes through. But these are the ideas that are killing American business and the American dream, aren't they?
Oh, completely. And, listen, you're not the heavy hand of government in every decision in business and in your life is dangerous. It's never worked anywhere in the world that's tried it. And as Kamala Harris says, these are my values. I get it. Those are your values. I don't think they're American values. And I've been doing this diner tour, to your point, Steve. And I have found that in the average Michigan diner, there is more common sense than in all the committee rooms in Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
I think that this is that turning point election. But we need those owners to talk about it. I'm going to guess about 80% of the ones that I have been to over the last few months, and we've gone to some great little mom and pop diners around the state, been there forever, a real staple in the community, and they're telling me the same thing. You increase my costs for my labor. You've increased my costs for my food product. And you talk about Democrats now. Increased my egg cost, my bacon cost, my toast cost. Now you're making my business costs go up at a point where I cannot sustain it. I don't make that much money here anyway.
Well, here's a shock number for you. Here's what the guy told me. He goes, that $24, excuse me, that $15 hamburger you buy at the pub will be $24. He's run the numbers. He's looked at that $15 hamburger you're paying now for a burger and some chips and whatnot is going to be $24. Who's going to pay that? That's why they're not going to make it. Nobody's going to pay the money. The inflation just clubbing people terribly bad. Anyhow, how do we get it under control? We got about 60 seconds here, Mike. How do you get it under control, and how do you win this election? Go.
Yeah, how do you get it under control? You got to go back. You got to cut spending. Listen, it can be done. It should be done. You pour that much cash into an economy with fewer goods and services, everything gets more expensive. We have to be energy independent. Why send money to Venezuela, Iran, Russia, when we should be keeping that money in the United States, helping our economy, and making sure that we're independent from any entanglement overseas? That's good, helps the economy do that. And the regulatory burden, and what they're talking about in that restaurant that you just mentioned, is a regulatory burden that they cannot overcome in their business. That's happening over and over and over again. These EV mandates, if we want to survive in Michigan, we have to end the EV mandates.
Survive in this country. Want to survive in this country. All those things are true across the country. Real quickly, where do they find you?
RogersForSenate.com. We need you now more than ever. Listen, we're tied. We're going into the fall. We've got them on the run. We just need the money to get that out there so I can introduce myself to voters. RogersForSenate.com. Every little bit helps.
Mike Rogers, always appreciate talking to you, my friend. Thank you.
Hey, thanks, Steve.